Just reach out. You try to be brave, pretend there's nothing wrong, but you need a little help, child, to make you feel strong. You know, lots of people love you.
So I'm John Kane, and I welcome you to Let's Talk Native on this Tuesday, December 31st. Many consider this the end of the year, and going in past midnight will be the start of the new year, and we'll talk about that. But while this program may not provide a path to spiritual enlightenment, we do encourage and in some cases start conversations. We don't do prayers or buffalo speeches. We take a tough look at history, oppression, survival. We talk about culture, the arts, politics, and identity. We may step on a few toes along the way, but our real goal here is to bring people together by breaking down what separates us. We will take on the false narratives and provide critical thinking to all that's heaped upon us. And we do it all right here from the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation. So let's talk Native. But first, let me remind people that our audio streams live on our website, which is letstalknative.com. We stream video of the show on our Facebook group pages via Facebook Live. We take the audio and we put it up as a podcast on SoundCloud, and we take the video and we put it up on our YouTube channel, which is Let's Talk Native TV. So search us on the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Just search for Let's Talk Native podcast by John. Let's Talk Native with John Kane podcast, and look for our videos on our YouTube channel, Let's Talk Native TV. We're also on Instagram at Let's Talk Native TV, and we are on Twitter at Let's Talk Native. I'm the host of the show, and I'm joined here in studio by Jake Proud, who's managing our audio and our video. Look, today is the day that many people celebrate. But as I indicated in my last show, sometimes the end of the year is tough for people. Not just December, but I worry about people putting significance to a calendar date, especially people who are struggling. I opened up with the show with Murray Porter's song that addresses suicide, Don't Let Go. Because my fear is that people come to the end of the year and they put such a significance to these artificial dates. Look, my new year started 11 days ago. I turned 60 years old on the 20th, so that starts my new cycle around the earth. Other cultures look at the solstice or the equinox or whatever to track when a year starts and when it ends. You know, as my good friend Ed Schindler used to say, every time he'd see somebody, he always said good morning, because every moment was the start of a new day, was the beginning of something. So people who are struggling, whether it's depression or substance abuse, or whether it's clinically diagnosed depression, or whether you're just sad, I want people to hold on. You know, like Murray says in the song, don't let go. And I think it's really important that we don't put significance to, like I said, arbitrary days assigned to a calendar or a clock or somebody's idea of what a holiday is supposed to be. Look, I realize that many people are going to celebrate today, and some people are going to celebrate in ways that are patently unhealthy. I think about my friends, back in Gunawaga, who used to shoot their rifles across the river, and those bullets land places. I think about the alcohol consumption and the drug abuse and drug use and just the celebration in general. Look, celebrating is fine, and if you join in with the masses and decide that this is going to be the night that you ring in a new year because the calendar says so, then by all means do it. But if you look at this day as a day that you can assign some significance to some fatal act, then I ask you to take a pause and to think about it. And look, part of what brings me to talking about this issue is a young life that was lost the day before Christmas, December 24th. Kelly Fraser, who was she's only 26 years old, a young girl, a woman, I should say, who was really writing a musical career, and she was having some success. And that's tough. It's tough to have success as a Native artist because we don't have this huge population base to support. We've got to cross over. And so for somebody like Kelly, who like Jeff Doreen, put a lot of emphasis on using language, native language, in her music. That's a limited market. And although she was nominated for a Juno Award and she was in the process of trying to do her third album, I know artists in particular struggle with all kinds of issues, substance abuse issues, depression, all kinds of stuff. Part of that creative process, it's almost a requirement to have a certain level of psychosis, I guess. And I'm not saying this to condemn artists. I just think this is it ties into the creative process, the highs and the lows, the manic moments, and and the whole bit, and so. But Kelly took her life, and when the news of her passing first came around, I think people wondered, geez, was there a substance abuse issue? Was there this? Was there that? And so when you learn that a young person who has been struggling with some mental health issues takes their lives, and you juxtapose that against other lives lost. My good friend Ben Carnes, struggling with cancer, who laid his life out on the line with treatment to be cured. So you look at one person who struggles and makes that decision to take their life, and others who are struggling to hang on to it. I lost my son-in-law in the month of December. The 18th of December is the anniversary of his passing. So for many people who see a suicide or a drug overdose as a selfish act because they have a loved one who is struggling to maintain some, to restore some health. I realize the tension that's created by these two things being juxtaposed, but I don't look at suicide as a particularly selfish act. It's a struggle. It's a mental health issue, and I think we need to do as much as possible, whether it's our children, our friends, our neighbors, our loved ones, or whether it's a complete stranger. I think we have to show more compassion, and I think we have to give encouragement. It's real easy for us as we go about our lives and we celebrate our good days, and we can be oblivious to the people who are struggling every single day. And I don't want to turn somebody's New Year's Eve celebration into a somber occasion necessarily, but I'm struggling with the loss of a friend and the loss of a complete stranger. And I think it's important that we think about those who are struggling, and we're all struggling to live. Even those who are battling with substance abuse or suicidal thoughts or whatever else, we are struggling. We're all struggling to live, whether we're fighting a disease like cancer or diabetes or whatever. So it's a battle that we're all engaged in, and it's not a battle without rest. But as Native people, we have historical trauma, and of course I'm always talking about history, and I'm talking about some of the things that our people have gone through and are going through. So I'm particularly aware of some of the struggles. And the feedback that I get a lot of times is, well, just get over it. You guys, you're always living in the past and that kind of stuff. Look, the reason that I address some of the issues that I address is because I think people have to be aware of them. And there's a certain pride we should take in not just surviving, but persevering. I know, excuse me. I know this talk of suicide on a New Year's Eve show may seem like a strange topic to pick up, but it's as the day wore on, and the more I thought of again my friend Ben Carnes and my and Kelly Fraser, who I became aware of
through Native American Music Awards, and Ellen Bello posted when the news of her passing a few days ago. And of course, then I look at the other significance. I mean, Kelly Fraser takes her life on the day before Christmas. The day after Christmas is the anniversary of an execution where 38 people have their lives taken from them. And again, I'm juxtaposing some of this death. Again, the death of a friend in Ben Carnes, and I'm trying to reconcile it all, and it's irreconcilable. I mean, you can't put it all together. But I felt like on this day, while people are celebrating, I know there are people who are struggling. I mean, even as I'm passing people today, what are you doing tonight? Nothing. I'm staying home, and that's okay. But I know some people stay home because they're lonely. And I know some people, have to weigh it out whether it's worth it to celebrate, because celebrations can go so wrong sometimes. There's risk associated with them. So while I'm not asking people to go out and celebrate tonight, I am asking people who do go out and celebrate to be careful. And I'm not asking anybody to add any special significance to this date. It is, look, it's a calendar is a man-made creation. It's not like solstice or equinox or the day that you're born. These days mean something. But a calendar, that's just something that the masses seem to agree upon as a way to chart days. But is today really the end of a year? Only on a calendar. Like I said, we all come into the world on our own days. And we all go out on our own days. I'm also, since I am talking about these, death, I guess, I also don't subscribe to the notion that the Creator only gave us a certain number of days and that it was predetermined at our birth. I don't believe that. And if anybody tells you that, challenge it. Because I refuse to accept that the day that it's predestined, the day that I'm going to die. So whether I take my life or whether I, overdose or whether I get hit by a truck, it was going to happen that day anyway. No, I don't believe that. So when I tell people don't let go, I'm saying it because I don't believe that your days have been predetermined. And if you can push past the tough days, if you can push through the things that you struggle with, whether it's, whether it's clinically diagnosed depression, whether it's a substance abuse problem, whether it's an argument, a fight, with a loved one, your relationship. When my daughters in particular, when they were young, one daughter in particular, I used to tell her, the things that you think are so significant today, when you look back a few days after, once you get through this cloud, through this storm, you realize that it wasn't that significant. But man, the things that you face on a day-to-day basis, the things you look at in front of you right now, can seem life-altering. They can seem life-ending. I know many Native people struggle with suicidal thoughts, and a lot of times it's tied to substance abuse, and it's tied to the stuff that that's heaped upon us every single day: racism, poverty. Struggle, our social interactions, all of it. History, intergenerational trauma. There's a lot of reasons to be down. But there's a lot of reasons, like I said, like my buddy Ed Schindler says. He says good morning. Because every day, every moment is a day to start over again, is a moment to start over again. So whether you look at January 1st as the start of a new year, I'm saying every moment is the start. It can be the start of a new year for everybody, for anybody. So my hope is that whether you're celebrating the ending of 2019 and the starting of 2020, or whether you're like me, you had a birthday recently, so you're in your new cycle around the sun, as they say, or whether you just pick today is going to be the day, regardless of the calendar, or whether it's tomorrow or whether it's a week from now. You pick that day to say, no, I'm dusting myself off and I'm moving forward. I just encourage people. We face a lot of challenges every day. We face a lot of challenges every year. 2019 was like many other years. Look, I saw loved ones that passed away. I saw friends pass away. I lost my good friend Veronica Papineau. I mean, but I also see young people coming into the world. I also see people working hard. When we go to break at the bottom of the hour, we're going to play another Dark Water Rising song featuring Charlie Lowry. Charlie is just, she's a life that you see, and when you hear her song, you hear her voice, she seems like she's celebrating life all the time, and yet she's struggling. She needs a kidney transplant, and so a transplant she got 9 years ago is finally failing, and so she needs a new kidney. So she's been struggling for this year, going through dialysis, I think 3 times a week or whatever. And so 2020 is a year that I hope Charlie Lowry sees a new kidney. I hope people who are struggling with any number of things, whether it's loneliness, depression, health issues, substance abuse. I've got many friends, that I've come to know on Facebook. And look, for all the battles that we fight these battles with an expectation that we will see some positive change, whether it's the mascot issue, as I wear one of my mascot shirts today, whether it's a mascot issue, whether it's environmental issue. We aren't fighting stuff just for the sake of fighting. We're fighting to improve things. And my last show, a live show in New York, my co-host Shawnee Rice, she seemed to, she struggled with the idea that there is so much bad out there that it can be, as she called it, soul crushing. But we have to remain optimistic. And I don't mean that we have to for the sake of doing it, but it's what we work for, because we do have children. Even people who have struggled with the idea of bringing a child into the world today. We still have nieces. We have nephews. We have, the children of our friends and family. So we know whether we decide to bring a child into the world, there are children coming into the world, and we have a responsibility to them. So whether we try to, figure out how to respond to climate change, look, I'm one of the ones who suggests it's probably too late to try to stop the climate from changing. I think we've gone off that cliff, but we have to prepare for it. We have to prepare for how we deal with the social interactions, the social tensions, the conflicts, the global conflicts. How we're going to deal with the very real potential for an economic crisis. But out of chaos is not just opportunity, but renewal. So, in spite of the challenges that we saw through this last year, politics, conflicts, war, all of it, we're going to see more of it going forward. Extreme weather situations. Look, every time I feel like I'm finally leveling off in some level, I'm going to have a car breakdown, or an appliance breaks down or something like that. And look, I live check to check. I live week to week. But you know what? I look at every new week, every new month as an opportunity to do something. And the reason for doing this show is to encourage conversations that will encourage action, positive action, not just fighting for the sake of fighting. And I don't mean fighting to tear something down. I mean fighting to build something up. So one of the messages that I have, and again, I opened up with Murray Porter's song dedicated towards suicide prevention, is don't let go. And I don't mean don't let go of your responsibilities, but don't let go of your life. Hold on. I mean, talk to somebody. Like Murray says, I mean, even if it's somebody you don't necessarily think that you can talk to, I think we have to reach out to each other. And I think we have to take the steps to build something. And, when we do the Ohunda Gariwadekwa, or the Gununyok, the whole idea behind those words we say before all else is to reaffirm the relationships that we can sometimes forget. And these relationships are important, not just our relationship to creation, but the relationship to each other. And I don't mean just family. Look, when I talk about our relationship to creation, as a Native person, I have to acknowledge that, look, there's a lot of white people in my world. And I have to understand what my relationship with even people who may be my adversaries. I have to understand that relationship and how to interact with them. How to confront them, but also how to convince them, how to, assert, my identity without trying to crush theirs. And that can be a challenge. Look, I'm a person whose nature is to confront conflict. And that confrontation can sometimes seem aggressive or mean-spirited. And while I don't mean it to be, and of course, when we post things on Facebook or on Twitter, words lack emotion when they're just printed on a screen. So sometimes you have to explain it. I got into a bit of a conflict with somebody who misunderstood a post that I put up when I was trying to suggest the problem with white men determining what a woman's reproductive rights should be. I made the comment that men are responsible, are primarily responsible for unwanted pregnancies. And I said, and it's men, white men in particular, who are the loudest voices trying to determine a woman's reproductive rights. That got interpreted that I was saying white men were responsible for, were disproportionately responsible for unwanted pregnancies. And I don't know that they are or they aren't. But that was my point. My point was, if you look at the makeup of the power base in the United States, Congress, Senate, the House, the presidential cabinet and staff, it's a lot of white people, and it's white men who represent the evangelical right. And so, but these words sometimes can get jumbled up when you put a post up there, and so almost goes without saying, a white guy got really offended because he thought I was being racist, and I wasn't. It's just a matter of fact that white men are trying to determine a woman's reproductive rights more so than anybody else. And that's so but I offered clarity, and my explanation, solved that potential conflict. But I do address racism, and in fact, what ruffled the guy's feathers, I went back to it. I says, but the truth of the matter is, since white people represent 53% of the population in the United States, there are more white unwanted pregnancies than any other than any other group of people. I mean, that's just a matter of numbers. I mean, black people represent 13%. You can be sure that, in spite of the fact, whether you think that proportionally, and a lot of these bad stats do heap up on people of color, Native people, black people, brown people. But the total numbers, people who are on welfare and social assistance, most of those people who are collecting, who are affected by Donald Trump's cutting food stamps are white people. And I know, most white people would love to think that it's all those black people collecting food stamps. No, it isn't. But see, when you have these conversations, you're bound to meet some resistance. But part of what I try to do here is encourage a conversation. So even if the conversation is a conversation that addresses the day-to-day struggles that people are having, again, with depression or substance abuse, or like I said, just plain sadness, loneliness. One of the things that contributes to depression is seclusion, not being around people. In fact, one of the things that an observation about heroin abuse, for instance, there was a lot of heroin abuse by Vietnam soldiers in Vietnam. But how many of those people were able to break their heroin addiction when they came home and they got around family again? When they were away and they were, in the tensions of war and the seclusion of being away from their families, it was easy to become addicted. So one of the best solutions for depression, for sadness, for loneliness is obviously being around people. So I encourage people to reach out and to, whether it's a friend that you haven't talked to in a long time, or whether it's a family member. If you're struggling with loneliness, For one thing, if you know somebody who's struggling with loneliness, by all means, reach out to them. But if you're struggling, reach out, even if it's to a child. So as we finish this day, which is a calendar day at the the last day of December, and people look towards celebrating at midnight the ball drop in Times Square or in Buffalo or Niagara Falls or any place else. As you're celebrating the new year, keep in mind that there are people who are lonely, and there are people who are sad, and there are people who are struggling with an abusive childhood or abusive relationships. And we all can do more. So as we're battling with missing and murdered Indigenous women issues, and some of those issues are tied to suicide, and they're certainly tied to abuse. So we all need to do more. And so I look at going into the new year as an opportunity to expand our relationships and to bolster our relationships, even with the people that we perhaps haven't had much of a relationship with. We need to reach out. We need to reach out, and we need to care. As one of the biggest problems that we have in the world today is again seclusion. Is this idea that we can separate ourselves from people, and we really do need to connect. And I talk about this a lot on the show. Is the sense of community. When I say sense of community, I'm not just talking about proximity, how close we live to each other. I'm not talking geography. I'm talking about relationships. Because we cannot argue or boast about Native identity and not bolster our relationships within our communities. We have to do more. And I know, look, I 3 times a week I sit in front of a microphone, and I'm not talking to a crowd of people looking back at me. I'm talking into the space. And I know some of you hear the messages, and then we have conversations. I like to do live events because I can actually see people. And the conversations that I hope that I try to encourage or start here, I'm hoping some of you will have those conversations. Look, I did see some posts this winding down this month where people opened up about some of their struggles. And I think that's a starting place. I know it's tough because I'm not saying Facebook is the best place to do it, or Twitter or Instagram or any of these others. But I do think we need to reach out. And we need to be receptive. We need to be receptive to the problems that we may not see ourselves. I know it's easy to say, well, I can appreciate somebody struggling with cancer, but I'm not sure that I can appreciate somebody struggling with addiction or even depression. Some of these things are really hard for people who can't relate or who don't want to relate to a struggle with suicidal thoughts. But it's important. It's important that we do. Because nobody should have to lose a child or a sister or a brother or a parent due to a suicidal thought that gets away from them, or due to trying to escape reality through an injection or through an overdose. We need to find other ways to make ourselves happy, and not just feel good, but to be happy. So as we wind this day down and we enter a new calendar year, a new decade, then I hope that we take the opportunity to reassert and reestablish and reaffirm perhaps relationships, or start relationships that we haven't had. All right, we're at the bottom of the hour, so we'll take a break. We'll go out with the Charlie Lowry song, Dark Water Rising, and we'll come back and finish the show. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk Native.
Lost alive today. first time we met. And you, oh, you give me the sweetest memory. And you, oh, you'll always, always mean the world to me. And that's why I'll be waiting to see your face again. I'll be waiting. Oh, waiting, yeah. Though I didn't have a chance to say goodbye, I'll say hello in the afterlife, just like.
All right, thanks for coming back. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk Native. Hey, it's funny. We were talking during the break. When we go to break, sometimes we see the numbers drop off as far as the people who are listening live. And look, I'm encouraged. I didn't know how much of an audience we'd have on a New Year's Eve. And look, I thank you guys for tuning in and checking us out. But when we go to a song, I mean, just bear with us. I catch my breath, take a drink so I can get my throat back and my voice back. But anyway, so here we're back. Let me, at this point, I want to thank our sponsors, and it's really important. Look, throughout the year, I've got sponsors who support what I do on a weekly basis, and then a few that support monthly, and those are the guys, those are the companies, those are the people who enable us to do what we do here. But then there's other people throughout the year. Some people who throw a check in the mail. I've got Stephen and VJ from New York. I've got Doc Shaw Bay. I've got my buddy Ed, Harry Wallace, Doc Shaw. I've got these people who help out on a sometimes just out of the blue. Cynthia Trice. I mean, these are the folks who are willing to to throw a few dollars in an envelope or in a card, offer me a message of support or encouragement, and you guys help us do the show. But I also want to thank all of you guys who share the show, and you guys who take time out to catch each a show twice a week or listen to it after the fact, even if you're not catching it live. I really do appreciate those of you who take the time out to at least hear the conversation. I'm sure that there are very few people thought I was going to use New Year's Eve as a day to talk about suicide, or about the somberness or the desolation of depression or substance abuse or whatever else. But it started to weigh on me today. And again, Kelly Fraser, the loss of my friend Ben Carnes, and just obviously I talked a lot about. Look, like I said, December's a tough month, but I also know that people sometimes they try to make a statement, whether it's with their partying or whether it's their substance abuse or even with suicide, because suicide oftentimes is tied to getting at such a place in depression that you not only don't see life as an option, but there can also oftentimes be a message that people want to send with it. And look, a lot of times people start to go down that path and then change their mind, but they may have already done something that put them in a bad way. I'm saying we need to do more to stop it. We need to reach out. And like I said, with children, it may seem easy, especially the sweet innocent child, the one that's fun to be around. But there's also kids that struggle. This idea of childhood suicide was unheard of a few years ago. In fact, the only place that the child suicides existed was on Native territories. Now there's more and more of them, including on Native territories. So we not only have to look at our own children, but other children, and we have to be prepared. Be prepared to step up and help. So I mean that is kind of my message, for this show and going forward as we go into the new calendar year. I'm hoping that we can put more emphasis on relationship building, more emphasis on how we have how we expand our sense of community. That is my hope, that we will do more and more of that. And so if this show, if I hijacked what people would expect of a New Year's Eve show and turned it into this, then look, I want to apologize for it. I think it's important. And there are tough issues facing us. I mean, we have a lot of challenges. Like I said, we don't know what 2020 is going to bring in terms of economic calamity, climate change, the political unrest, social unrest, global conflict. I mean, as much as I criticize the fact that Native people enlist at a high rate, we still do. We've got loved ones, we've got family members who are in the armed forces, and we don't know when some guy in Washington is going to decide to put them in harm's way, not because they're defending liberty, but because somebody decided that there's a financial need, a national interest need. We see the conflicts that have grown out of not just racism and white supremacy, but this sense of nationalism. This idea that there's a class of people who have to look down on other classes of people to strengthen their nation, like their nation is tied to some genetic markers. And we see that in lots of places. The United States, I mean, that's what the white supremacy movement is. We see it in countries all over the world where this sense of nationalism and trying to become more exclusive and casting people into that role of the other. But those people we need to reach out to too. So, I mean, it's easy to bolster your current friendships. And as easy as that is, we may not be doing enough of that, but it might be harder to reach out to the people who are not necessarily our friends. When I do my show in New York, I take phone calls. I spend almost a full hour of phone calls each show. And when I do those phone calls, I know that I'm going to be met with some hostility from some people. And I can be confrontational too. But then when I think back and I go to do the show the next time, I say, I'm glad somebody challenged me. I don't mean because I was physically challenged or emotionally challenged, but intellectually challenged. Because even if I can't convince somebody not to be angry at me or hateful or spiteful towards me or a comment that I said, perhaps somebody else who's hearing the conversation will say, no, I don't want to be in that place. I don't want to get in that place. I can, even if you can understand both sides of a conflict, perhaps viewing it from a distance enables you to bridge the gaps, at least for you personally. There's nothing wrong with having a spirited debate on a subject, even on tough subjects. And when I say a spirited debate, I don't mean that we have to, be angry. We can be emotional, and we may have a reason for being emotional about healthcare or children, and child welfare. We may be have a personal and emotional reason for being concerned about people who are on food stamps, or SNAP checks or whatever. We may be concerned about global conflicts because we do have loved ones who are in the military. So we may all have some personal reasons or our own experiences, what we've gone through in the past, whether we were, had carried or worn a uniform of the military. Maybe that skews our view about how we should look at the military going forward. Maybe our needs, for some social safety net were met, and now, do we begrudge people who are in the same place, or do we encourage people? I don't know what the circumstances may be, but we all get to a place, and we form opinions that oftentimes are not based on a reality, but just perhaps just an emotion. So I think we have to reach across. One of the things that I do with this show and my show in New York is I try to offer a perspective, not the Native perspective, because let's be honest, there's a lot of Native people who don't agree with some of the things that I talk about here. But I try to offer a perspective from somebody who's been involved in many Native communities. I've traveled. I am well read. I try to seek out truth. in in a world of fake news and propaganda. I try to cut through the BS of how history is taught. I try to find some truth in that history, and I offer my own deductions from that truth, but encourage others to have to make their own conclusions, and then discuss them, because it doesn't make sense for us to all settle back into our corners, and to draw our own conclusions and then just stew about it. I again, when I talk about seclusion and this idea of brooding over an issue, the best thing to do with something that we struggle with, or perhaps a view that angers us, is to talk about it. And I'm not just talking about having a discussion because you're contemplating suicide, but no matter what the circumstance is, trying to talk it out without trying to be argumentative, but trying to have a conversation, and asking how somebody else would view a similar situation, or if anybody else has been through the same experience. One of the things that people do when they battle with substance abuse, whether they go to these sessions, these AA sessions or whatever else, they hear other people's stories. And it's not because misery loves company. It's about knowing that you're not alone in the struggles that you're going through. So I mean, look, even on this show, we've had a few people who were struggling with substance abuse, and we all struggle with something. We all have our, we all have a monkey on our back over something, whether it's history, whether it's some guilt that we carry forward because of our own behavior, or something we should have done more to prevent, or whatever. We have many opportunities throughout our life to do good. We don't always seize those opportunities to do good. Sometimes we weigh out the convenience of it. And oftentimes we live with a certain level of regret when we know that there was a missed opportunity. And I don't mean just a missed opportunity to make money or to advance yourself, but a missed opportunity to do something, an act of kindness. And that act of kindness could be something small. Sometimes it doesn't take much. I mean, I don't know, if you live in Western New York and you're listening to the show, there's a woman who works in a toll booth on the thruway, who, once you've met this woman, once she's been the one to take your money or give you your toll ticket, she changes your whole day, just because she is so damn pleasant. And she's so engaging, and she'll call you sweetheart or baby, or and she's not just saying words. She genuinely brightens a person's day just with a 1 minute conversation or a 30-second conversation going through a toll booth. So that one woman, and she's kind of famous. She's legendary in Western New York. Tiny black woman. Works in the toll booth, and she just brightens people's day I've driven through a toll that she's manned or tended, I guess. Man might not be the right word. Many times, and I always leave it with the same reaction. I feel like my day's been brightened, and she's not physically doing anything other than just being pleasant. So we all have an opportunity, even in the smallest of fashions, to brighten our own day and the day around us. So, look, I'm not asking for a New Year's resolution, or a commitment, but I offer it as a suggestion that we at least look for the opportunities to do good. And I don't mean big things. They could be small things. It could be holding a door. I mean, it could be just doing the smallest of favors. And you know what? They don't always have to be an act of kindness that we need to get a response for. So, again, what I suggest is that we all just do a little bit more in terms of reaching out to other people and sharing some act of kindness. Look, I say at the beginning of the show that I don't give buffalo speeches, and I don't do prayers. And so when I hear people, offer their thoughts and prayers on Facebook and Twitter and, in cards and letters and that kind of stuff, maybe we need to offer more than thoughts and prayers. I say the same thing about voting, right? Maybe we need to do a little bit more than just pull a lever once every 2 years or every 4 years. And maybe we need to do something more than offer thoughts and prayers. Maybe we need to do some actions. Maybe there's an act of kindness or an act of resistance, whatever the case may be. As we go into the new calendar year, I just put it out there that I just suggest that if that opportunity comes to take a stand, to decide whether you're going to buy this or that, or whether you're going to buy something at all, whether you're going to help somebody, whether you're going to tip somebody, whether it's dropping change in the can of a homeless person, or a street musician, or whatever it might be, that we try to do a little more, not because it's going to be a heavy burden on us. And look, it's reciprocating. Look, when you perform an act of kindness, it makes you feel a little bit better. And look, even if you don't get the immediate response that you expect, it's hard to know. It's hard to know how much a chain of events can affect somebody's life. I recall just walking down the street in New York, a woman. I watched a man approach an older woman walking down the street, and reading the body language, I just came closer, and all I did was get close enough to discourage what turned out was a guy who was trying to take money from this woman. I didn't beat him up. I didn't have to, offer any real physical threat. I just showed up. I just walked a few steps closer. Sometimes we don't need to do much. We don't have to be superheroes. We just have to be a little kinder and a little bit more compassionate. So, I again, I know in an hour people are going to be, ready to, count down the ball drop on television and look, I've done New Year's Eve in New York City. I've been there, and so I got caught up in a lot of the hype and that kind of stuff. Tonight it'll be quiet at home with my wife and I. As soon as I get out of here. But I do, the significance of today or tonight, and after midnight is that's not what's important. And we shouldn't put too much of an emphasis on a clock's countdown. But as we go forward, as the new calendar year starts and we come into spring, which is really the beginning of a new year, I hope that we can all do a little bit more, and we can all spread a little more kindness, a little more joy, a little more happiness, because the pursuit of happiness should not come at the expense of others, because that's not pursuing happiness. You cannot make yourself happy by making somebody else miserable. Even if you think that's the case, it's not the case. And in fact, you can't see the success. You can't really see success if you don't see people around you succeeding. That's why I talk about the sense of community. Look, if you look at what comes out of the White House today, as far as numbers, boasting about record-breaking stock market rates and that kind of stuff, unemployment and all that other stuff. The numbers say one thing, but the fact of the matter is there's more income disparity. There are more losers and fewer winners, but the winners are winning bigger. The rich are getting richer. So there are fewer rich people, but they're getting richer. And so that balances up. I mean, there is more wealth accumulated in the top 1% than the bottom 50%. This is a problem. You cannot have this level of inequity, of income disparity, of wealth disparity. You can't have such disparity. You can't have success if that success is born on the back of people who are not succeeding. So we can look at it in the macroeconomics viewpoint, or you can just look at your neighbors. And if you're not doing something to help, your family, your friends, and your relatives. If you're not taking the opportunity to help somebody else succeed at some level, then you can't be successful. Because your success cannot really be success if people around you are struggling. And look, and you can see this in wealthy people, and you can see this in people who are struggling. So, again, my message going into 2020, and look, I put a calendar up on my my screen, so I realize that these dates and these calendars are arbitrary from a native standpoint, from most people's standpoint. It's just something we use to chart, the days of the week and the year and that kind of thing. But as we go into this new year, this new decade, and we know that there's some things that are going to happen in this upcoming year. There's going to be an election in a U.S. Election that's going to be significant. And although I won't participate in it, I know that it affects me. But I also know there's going to be a lot of BS thrown out there. And there'll be people fighting from the right and from the left. And those of us who are neither right nor left, have to navigate the lives that we live because that's our environment. It's not because it's our system. But capitalism, the U.S. System, the settler colonialism, whatever you want to call it, that is our environment, and we have to know how to navigate that environment. Just like we would have to navigate a wilderness environment, we have to navigate the jungle environment of man. So we have to figure out how we get through, and we have to know how to interact with each other, not just native to native, but native to non-native. So I encourage everybody who goes into the new year to be willing to have a conversation and maybe some tough conversations. This show tonight was probably not what most people expected. In fact, as I sorted out what I was going to talk about today, I struggled with the idea of talking about suicide and depression and substance abuse on a day that some people want to go out and celebrate. I don't want to take the wind out of anybody's sails, because celebration isn't the problem. The problem is the struggles that the people who can't celebrate, or the people who will celebrate in spite of the stuff that they're struggling with. We had snow come through, so we have weather issues tonight. So I worry about people on the roads. I worry about those people who are struggling with substance abuse and depression, especially on holidays, because sometimes holidays, and that's a strange word, but sometimes holidays can just add pressure to people who are struggling. I hope this one doesn't. And I look forward to the new year, and although I've got to look forward to the new year with some people that I lost this year. And the likelihood is, there are people, loved ones that I'll lose in the next calendar year. But I'm also watching my grandchildren grow, and the friends that they have, and the families that we've connected through not just my children's generation, but my grandchildren's generation. The cycle continues. So I want to thank you for listening to this show. I want to wish you a happy new year. I want to congratulate you for making it through through the last decade, making it through this last year. And I encourage people to do the best they can as they go forward. Don't let go. We'll see you on the other side. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk Native. Yahweh.